Hello friends, welcome again. Friends, in today's video lecture, we want to discuss Charles Dickens as an important Victorian novelist of English literature. We are going to discuss Dickens as a social reformer of English literature. Friends, when we talk about Victorian age, that means the whole 19th century from 1830 to 1900, these 70 years, the period is known as the age of Queen Victoria. When we talk about this period in English literature, when we are discussing poetry, we must remember Robert Browning and Alfred Tennyson because they were the two outstanding poets of the Victorian era. When we are talking about criticism, we must remember Matthew Arnold, Walter Pater, and John Ruskin. These three are the most outstanding critics of the Victorian era. But friends, when we talk about novels in English literature during this Victorian era, we must remember Charles Dickens because he was the most outstanding and the most influential writer as far as novel is concerned. Dickens, who was born in 1812 and died in 1870, was the greatest novelist of this era, and many critics after Charles Dickens, they were so influenced by his contribution that they have extolled the genius. Extolled means appreciated the genius and talent of this novelist. And David Cecil is one of them. David Cecil wants to say that Charles Dickens is the one novelist of his school whose books have not grown dusty on the shelves. That means he wants to say that his books, his novels, are regularly used and read by the readers, and no dust is collected on his novels. Okay, his popularity has not suffered any decline even after his death. Friends, in English literature, there are hundreds and thousands of novelists and poets who become very popular during their own lifetime. But they became popular only for a shorter period of time. But Dickens is an exception in this regard. His popularity has been increasing day by day. And David Cecil wants to further say that he is not only the most famous of Victorian novelists, he is also the most typical. That means he is the representative novelist of his age. What qualities do you find in Victorian society? They are realistically reflected by Charles Dickens in his novels. Okay, in his country, he has been heartily loved by the people and loved by all classes of the people. When Dickens died, when he breathed his last, he was not only popular in England, but he was popular in all countries across Europe. And that says how outstanding this novelist is. Now the question is, what are his important novels? Then as you can see on the screen, Pickwick Papers, Oliver Twist, Nicholas Nickleby, David Copperfield, Hard Times, Great Expectations, and other such novels have made him such an important writer of English literature. Friends, now we are going to examine important outstanding elements which we see in all his novels, and one of them is the element of realism. Realism means Dickens has tried to give the realistic picture of his society, whether good or bad, whether virtues or vices, all are dealt with very realistically by Charles Dickens in his novels. Dickens was not interested in presenting the romanticism of the previous age. Okay, he tried his pen to write about the life of the London as he actually witnessed with his own eyes, and that is why we can call him a realist. Not only this, in his novels you come across circuses, gardens, prisons, boarding houses, some slum areas and all. But remember, these are not the imaginative creations of Dickens. Dickens personally, practically visited all these places in London, and then he has given them reflection in his novels. And that is why, we call him a realist, we call him a realist novelist. The slums of Oliver Twist, the low courts of Bleak House is the title of his novel, the boarding school which you find in the novel Great Expectations, all these pictures give realistic touch to all his novels. But remember friends, though Charles Dickens was a novelist of realism, but still he makes the realistic life of London pleasing and touching by the use of his imagination. So his novels are actually the combination of realism and imagination. Hugh Walker, an important critic of Charles Dickens, has also said in this regard, he said that what Dickens gives us is not the bare hard fact, but the fact suffused with the glow of rich imagination. So Hugh Walker wants to say that in Dickens we find a nice amalgamation, a nice mixture, a nice combination of imagination and realism. Okay, another important quality that you see in most of his novels is moralism. Moralism means teaching some moral lessons to the society. Dickens was by heart a moralist, by heart an idealist. Though he presents the sinful life in his novels, he has presented and exposed the sinful people, bad people of his society, but at the same time he has no sympathy for such people. He has realistically and boldly exposed such very bad people of the society. He has exposed the social evils of London in his novels, and that proves that he had faith in goodness. He had faith in moralism. He had faith in the triumph of virtue. Virtue means goodness. Okay, when he presents the social evils of London, like child labor was there during the 19th century, bad education system, corruption in the government, all these things are very boldly exposed by Charles Dickens in his novels, and he condemns and criticizes all these social evils, and that's why we can call Charles Dickens as a moralist, as an idealist. Another important element that you see in Dickens' novels is his feeling of reforming the society, and that's why many critics believe that Dickens was a very important social reformer of the Victorian era. He directed his pen to root out the social evils from his society, from British society. In all his novels, he pointed out at some of the social drawbacks, social evils of London. The tyrannical schoolmasters, the corrupt government officers, all these are, condemned by this writer Charles Dickens. He sympathizes the poor people working in the factories. He has sympathy. Charles Dickens shows his feeling of sympathy for the poor people, for the children who are exploited, who are living in the boarding houses, boarding schools, okay, the prisoners who are beaten by the jailers, jail authorities. I mean, he shows sympathy for all such suffering people, and there, he wants to send a message to the society by exposing all these social evils. Charles Dickens tries to send a message to the society that we must come out from these social evils and we must lead a moral life, a life of betterment. Okay, Dickens was not only a social reforming novelist. Before him, there were some other novelists also who did the same thing, like Daniel Defoe, Henry Fielding, Oliver Goldsmith, and all other people. Okay, but it is believed that the greatest reformative zeal that you find in English literature among all these novelists, then it is Charles Dickens. W.L. Cross hails Dickens as the greatest social reformer for full 30 years. Right? So, for 30 years, he had been known during the Victorian era as a great social reformer. Another important thing that we must mark here is his power of creating humor in his novelist. In fact, as a humorist, Dickens stands supreme among the Victorian English novelists. Okay, and even some critics go to the extent of saying that Dickens was only next to William Shakespeare as far as creating humor is concerned. No doubt, he could not create the humorous characters like William Shakespeare, as in Shakespeare's plays you find very funny characters like Bottom and Puck and Falstaff, but still, in Dickens' novels also, we come across some very important and very memorable comic characters like Mr. Micawber, Mr. Gamp, Sam Weller, Mr. Guppy, Mr. Pumblechook. Even the names are very funny names, So these are some memorable humorous characters which are drawn by Charles Dickens, and they have become immortal in English literature. Right? Another important thing is his art of characterization. Dickens was a master in the art of characterization, and he has presented a variety of characters. He has taken the characters from all different classes of the society, and that's why we find complete life in his novels, right? Mainly, it is said that Dickens has drawn mainly 4 kinds of different types of characters. Number 1, innocent little children like Oliver, Joe, Paul, Peep and all. Then we have another set of characters in all his novels like horrible characters like Squeevers, Fagin, Uriah Heep and Bill Sykes and all. Then we have humorous characters, as I told you earlier, Micawber, Sam Weller, Guppy and all. And then we have very powerfully drawn characters like Lady Dedlock, Sidney Carton and others. But after having discussed all these things, the element of realism, element of humor, Dickens as a social reformer, Dickens' moralism and all these things, we must also discuss his loose plot construction. Friends, this is the only limitation of Charles Dickens as a novelist. You can say that this is the drawback of his novels, that he is not the master of developing very powerful plot constructions in his novels. Okay, his plots are suffering, they are very incoherent, and there is not much unity of action found in his novels. His stories are, many times it is believed, they are shapeless bags in which different objects of different sizes are put it together, right? So that's why, some critics have criticized Charles Dickens' loose plot construction, okay? But remember, why there is no good plot construction in his novels? The reason is that, most of his novels were published in a series system, right? He did not write the whole novel at a time. He writes one chapter, it is published, then next week another chapter, it is published. So that is the reason why, it is very difficult to bring about a kind of link between different events and actions which are presented by Dickens, and that was the only reason why you find this limitation, that in his novels we do not find good plot construction. But however, David Cecil admires Dickens by saying that he may not construct the story well, but he tells it admirably. I mean, as far as story construction is concerned, he may not do well, but we must remember that he tells the story in the most artistic manner. So he is a good storyteller. He is not a good story builder, right? So here, friends, we come to the end of this discussion. So far we have discussed moralism, realism, social reformation, then humor and plot construction. All these things are very important to study when you are examining Charles Dickens as a novelist. So friends, I end up here. If you have any doubts or questions, do write to me in the comment section of this channel. Thank you very much.